In this video, I'm going to show you how I made my own tactical flight computer for paragliding. I purchased a KOBO Aura Edition 2 from eBay for about $70. I selected this because it has a serial port that I can use to connect to the Vario. For barometric and GPS sensor, I got the BlueFlightVario for serial port from BlueFlightVario.com for about $70. To back up the SD card in the KOBO, I use the HDD RAW copy tool, which I got it from downloadcnet.com. After downloading the HDD RAW copy tool into my computer, I install it following the regular prompts for this application. Then I was ready to start working on the KOBO itself. I removed the back cover using a flat screwdriver and my fingers. Immediately after removing the back cover, I removed the power supply to the circuit, so if I by mistake made a short circuit, I will not fry the board. Then I removed the SD card from the KOBO to back it up. This is important because in case something goes wrong, the only way to restore the software in the KOBO will be restoring the backup of this SD card. To back it up, I had to put the SD card in one of the computer's readers. Because the SD card is formatted for the KOBO, I couldn't see it in the regular OS tools. However, once I launched the backup tool, I was able to see it and select it to back it up. Then I was able to select a name for the backup destination file. And once done that, I was able to start the process, which took approximately 10 minutes. After finishing the backup of the SD card, I returned the SD card to the KOBO. Then I located the serial port on the board to estimate the cable's length to the place where I wanted the sensor to be in the outside of the KOBO. To work underneath the board, I disconnected all the plastic ribbons. Well, not all of them. And I removed all the screws on the board. I couldn't remove that last ribbon, but I figured I could work with that still attached. Using a Dremel, I proceed to open a hole in the case to pass the cables next to the position where I wanted the sensors to be in the outside of the KOBO. Having prepared the telephone cable that came with the BlueFlightVario to the appropriate length, I took the individual cables and soldered them to the serial port holes in the board. I made sure that I soldered them through the bottom of the board. It is important to remove every excess of solder to prevent a short circuit. I decided for color-coded cables because they made it easy to identify the cables once I am connecting them to the BlueFlightVario. In total, I connected 4 different cables. I used black and red for power and ground, and green and yellow for transmit and receive. At this point, I was ready to assemble the KOBO back. For that, I reconnected all the ribbons, making sure that the ribbons were well aligned with their connectors and tightened them up so there was a good connection between the ribbon and the board. I routed the cables through the recently created hole, and I organized them in such a way that they will allow the back cover to close without any problem. At this point, I put the screws back into the board. At this point, I was ready to do a quick test by connecting the power back and turning on the device in order to see if I haven't fried the board during this process. I had to use the cover to locate the power button. Once I located it, I was able to test that the system was starting up and verify that the touch sensor was well connected and responding appropriately. The next step was connecting the Vario to the cables that were protruding from the KOBO. For this step, the color coding of the cables helped align the proper output on the serial port inside the KOBO with the corresponding serial connections on the BlueFlightVario itself. The serial port elements are labeled both in the KOBO and in the Vario, so they are easy to align. Voltage should be connected to voltage and ground should be connected to ground. The only caution is that TX or transmission should be connected to RX or reception and vice versa. After finishing soldering the cables to the Vario, I used the blue heat shrink wrap to cover the Vario, some black duct tape to further isolate the barometric sensor from the light, and a double face tape to glue the Vario to the front of the KOBO. Then I put the cover back, pressing firmly to close it. I was ready to connect the KOBO to the computer and, following the instructions of LK8000, install it on the KOBO and be ready to test it.